So far, we have talked about what is homeostasis and the role of different systems of the body in maintaining it. In this section, we will discuss the components that make up the homeostatic system and the mechanism of action. The homeostasis system in the body acts through self-regulating devices, which operate in a cyclic manner. This cycle includes 4 components. 1. Sensors or detectors, which recognize the deviation. 2. Transmission of this message to a control center. 3. Transmission of information from the control center to the effectors for correcting the deviation. Transmission of the message or information may be an electrical process in the form of impulses through nerves or a chemical process, mainly in the form of hormones, through blood and body fluids. 4th, effectors, which correct the deviation. You can also look at it as the system receives information through the sensors and conveys commands to the effectors via the control center. Let's look at each of these components in more detail. Starting with sensor, the sensor or receptor, as the name implies, is the part of a homeostatic system that receives information regarding the status of the body. Any external or internal change is sensed by these sensors. It is in the form of a sensory nerve terminal that receives the information, that is, stimulus, and then responds by producing a nerve impulse according to the type, presence, or absence or extent of stimulation. Examples of receptors in the human body are as follows. Nociceptors are the receptors responsible for detecting or responding to pain stimuli. Peripheral chemoreceptors are the receptors that respond to chemical changes in the blood, for example, oxygen concentration. Photoreceptors are the receptors that react to light stimuli. Thermoreceptors are the receptors in a sensory cell sensitive to changes in temperature. And mechanoreceptors are the receptors in the skin that reacts to various mechanical stimuli. These are some of the sensors in the body that detect any deviation in the homeostasis status. Now let's talk about the control system. The control centers pertain to the homeostatic component that processes impulses relayed by the receptors. Examples of the control centers are the respiratory center and the renin-angiotensin system. As for the effector, the effectors are the target of the homeostatic response that would bring about the reversion of conditions to the optimal or normal range. At the tissue or organ level, they are exemplified by the muscle or the gland. At the cellular level, they are the receptors of a nerve, including the nuclear receptors. If we take the example of thermoregulation, we have already discussed its importance in maintaining homeostasis. The components that play a role in it are as shown here. The stimulus is the rise in temperature. This information is received by the nerve cells in the skin and brain, which is then conveyed to the temperature regulatory center in the brain. From the brain, command signals are generated to the effectors, which in this case are the sweat glands. To correct the deviation from the optimal level of temperature, the sweat glands produce sweat and cause vasodilation to bring down the temperature. So to summarize, these 3 components work by first detecting and then responding to the information, a stimulus, by the receptors of sensory cells. They respond to the detected change in the environment by relaying the information to the control center for processing, or directly to a particular target effector. Processing in the control center entails deliberation and determination of the appropriate response to the relayed stimuli. Then it sends this message to the effectors. The effectors, upon receiving the message, would bring about the supposed response that would revert to the normal homeostatic range.